Fire your boss, sell your car, travel the world. You're listening to Barefoot Radio with your host, Graham Brown.
Hello, this is Graham Brown from Barefoot Radio. Today I'm with Amirah Cook from Cool Young History. How are you doing, Amirah?
I'm good, Graham. How are you?
Fantastic. And tell me, where are you today?
Today I am in Henfield doing a house sit, my first house sit in England. So it's really exciting and it's really freeing. I love it.
Let's talk about when you actually set out. And one of the questions I like to ask the guests on the radio is that talk us through that day you were leaving. You know, what were you doing? You had the suitcases, the taxi coming. Tell us what was going on and how you were feeling.
The good thing for us was that our schedule was so jam-packed that we really didn't even have any time to think, right? So our lease was up on the 30th of September and we flew out on the 30th of September. So we had cleaned out our apartment the day before, had it spotless, and decided, you know, because our families were like having a difficult time with this. I tell you, I had never lived outside of the United States or traveled outside of the United States, but I had lived away from my family for 7 years, my entire adult life, while my husband had never moved outside of Ohio.
Right.
So his family was even, you know, they were like, everyone was freaking out a little bit. So we decided that the night before we would spend with our families. We would stay the night there since our apartment was cleaned out and everything. So we spent the first half of the day with my husband's parents and his family, and then we spent the night at my parents' home. So it was really surreal for everyone. Everyone was just kind of, you know, couldn't believe this was happening. But for us, it was, yeah, I love you guys. I want to spend some time, but we have to pack our lives into two 35-liter backpacks. So when we were with his family, we got no packing done. When we were with my family, they wanted to talk and hang out and all this. So we didn't sleep before we left. We packed through the night after my parents went to sleep, and we really underestimated the goal of getting your entire life into two backpacks because we didn't leave any storage, or we didn't want to have any things tying us to, you know, some geographical location. So I did leave one container that has like my wedding ring, my wedding dress, and you know, all of our important files and my pictures, because I'm one of those people that loves physical pictures and I need to get into 2014. But so we left this little thing, but everything else went into these backpacks. So it took us the entire night. I think we slept maybe 30 minutes. And then luckily we flew into Florida from Ohio and had an overnight stay there so that when we flew out of the country, we weren't so, you know, exhausted and jet lagged. So we got to stay in Florida for a night and, you know, without the families around us, you know, crying the entire time.
Right.
And then that's when we flew into Panama. So before we flew out of the country, it was very, very jam-packed, but I would always suggest to take a little time for yourself away from your family. So you usually have to fly somewhere before you fly out of the country. So take one night there to, you know, readjust and be able to go into the country, you know, excited and energized.
Yeah, good advice. So you're taking this flight from Florida down to Panama.
Yes.
And you're leaving Florida, and as the plane's taking off, you must have had some kind of realization that this is it now. You know, everything you have is in the backpacks, in the hold, and here you go.
For us, it was even the craziness of it all started before we even got on the plane, because as my husband, I'm a pessimist. I will admit I'm a pessimist. My husband is an optimist. So when we were in the hotel the night before or the morning of we're going to fly out, I'm trying to check into our flight online and it's like, you can't check in.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh gosh, they're going to tell us we can't fly out of the country. Something
you
terrible
haven't even
is happening.
started yet.
Like, we haven't even started yet, right? And so he's like, no, it'll be fine. And so we get to the airport and they're like, you have a one-way out of the country. You have to show ongoing travel, you know? And of course, like I said, we had never flown out of the country, let alone on a one-way. So we didn't, you know, we didn't know what to do. We're scrambling I'm about to cry because I'm one of those people, or was one of those people at this time, where when one thing goes wrong in the plan, I'm like shattered. Like, no, 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 this isn't supposed to happen.
Right.
So the lady was nice enough to tell us, just buy a ticket now that you're coming back on our airline. And then once you get there, you can return the ticket. You have 24 hours. So it's like, okay, okay. It only cost us $240. So, it was a quick, easy fix as far as I was concerned at that moment. And so then we get on the plane, and I'm so nervous. I like, when I'm on the plane, the butterflies really start kicking in, and I'm afraid initially. And we ended up sitting next to this wonderfully sweet lady. Oh, she was so sweet. And the reason we started in Panama was because my family is historically from Panama on my father's side. And so we're so excited, but this woman, I couldn't help but notice she looked like my family. So about halfway through the flight, I just decided she was like a long lost aunt or something. And we just had this really cute Spanglish conversation the entire time, of her trying to teach me Spanish and me trying to speak to her in English, because I hadn't done many of my online Spanish lessons by that point. And so it was just, she like really helped me and relieved me. And by the time we were, halfway to Panama or even there, I was like really happy to have these butterflies. And I felt like that was me living for the first time. Like that was the feeling that, I was going to have to get used to and embody. And so I have. And now I'm kind of upset. I don't really feel the butterflies like I used to, because it's just my life now.
Right. Well, let's talk about that. You've been away for how long?
I've been away for a year and maybe like 2 weeks. October 1st was our
Anniversary.
1 year travel versary. Yeah.
Congratulations. So you've been on the
Thank
road
you.
for a year, and you've seen some pretty amazing places, and you can see the travelogue on your blog. We share the link at the end of this. So
Oh, thank
tell us a little bit about that point that you made earlier, that you said you were the kind of person like this. In 12 months, I guess you've changed a bit. What have you noticed yourself in terms of how you've changed by living this life?
Well, I will say, for anyone that's going to travel, I would recommend that you either write it down or proclaim to whoever you're going to travel with, or to yourself, what you want to change out of this journey. Because I think it's much better than just going into it blindly and just taking what you get. And at the end, just like, hey, now I can do this, and now I'm not this way. But there were things about myself that I wanted to develop into, strengths rather than weaknesses. And one of which was I was very high strung and like a control freak. And I studied accounting. I'm an accountant by trade. So I'm very linear. I'm very, this plus this equals this, and this has to go here, and you have to have this set up to do this. And my husband's not, he's an artist. And so he's just like, no, we'll just figure it out. Before we would go to places, I'm Googling and, reading blog after blog, and, well, they said this and they said this. And he's like, maybe they stayed at a different place. He's just so free. And so at the beginning, I would stress myself out, and it just always, even if I have it planned or not, it goes how it wants to go. And like,
Right.
I've learned to just, as I call it, go with the flow, which is this skill that so many people have, but was like something I could never achieve in my life. Like, I was very, very hands-on and a worrier. So that's been the biggest thing for me, is that I can just relax and just go with it, and just, know that nothing is going to, break me. I'll be okay. I won't turn to dust if something, doesn't go as planned.
Yeah, and I think you have to, right? Living on the road, you can't
You
be
have
anything
to.
but everything goes wrong, and that's part of it. It never
Everything.
goes in a straight line, right?
It never does.
And I think as well, an interesting point is about how, that's part of the whole process of why we travel. I mean, a lot of people travel for the sights. They want to see the Eiffel Tower, and they want to see the Colosseum in Rome, etc., etc. But ultimately, it's a personal journey, really, isn't it? It's a personal journey of change, and it comes from meeting people and having these experiences, right?
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, you've done a year. Time to go home, right?
Oh no. Oh no. When we left, our goal was to go into the Olympics 2016, and then like wrap it
Wow.
up in Brazil. But now, any traveler will tell you the more you see, the more you want to see, And so we plan to be in Europe for 3 months, 6 months, half a year maybe. We've been here 6 months and we've been to 2 countries. So,
Wow.
It doesn't ever work as you want. And when you are enjoying a place, you enjoy a place. And then, when you come into opportunities, you seize those opportunities. And, it's not, when you're not living on a clock or a, set schedule, it's just so much funner and freer to just go with it. So it does seem like we'll go longer than we initially anticipated. But again, you never know what opportunities will, present themselves and call us to different parts of the world, potentially the United States. So
Right.
who
Okay.
knows?
So, I mean, let's talk about the basics. I mean, actually making it work and funding it, because if you're planning to travel long term, you've either got the biggest bank account in history, or you're sort of scraping by on pot noodles and sleeping in dorm rooms, right? But it's
Right.
not either that case. How are you actually making it happen? Because I think a lot of people think that if you want to travel long term, you've got to be a millionaire, right? But
Right.
is that the
Oh, go ahead.
case?
Well, see, my husband actually, he's had to tell me to stop telling people we're traveling indefinitely, because then people start looking at you like, so wait, they've got a lot of money, and he's so worried they're going to try to rob us or something because you're telling them they probably think we're rich. But no, for us, it hasn't been that case at all. We're not even the responsible people who planned and saved for years or any time period before going. We quit our careers. I quit my career like a year and a half before we went on the journey, because it was I knew I didn't want to do that. I knew I wasn't passionate about it. I wasn't happy. I wasn't making myself or anyone better. I was just making money. And it was if I'm only doing this for money, then the goal has to be how much money I have. And I'm not even rich, and I'm not going to get rich on this path. So this isn't the right thing. And my husband was the same way. So he quit his career about a year before we took off. And we had this year of, this lease we had just got, and it was, okay, well, we've got a year to figure out how we're going to do this. And we have to be so successful that not only are we able to cover our yearly expenses for this year in Ohio, but once the year is up, we've got to be ready to travel abroad indefinitely. So for us, it's been a very unique journey, because it's also been our entrepreneurship, development. And so we've started and launched and failed several businesses. And the goal is to have an online business that creates passive income, so that we're able to make money online wherever we are, and to, stay location independent, as you talk about in your book. And so for us, we sold everything and took that amount of money. We had less than $5,000 when we left. I think it was so small to the point that we've been traveling a year now, and we have more money now than we did when we left, because we sold, all of the fixings of our homes, our closets, our cars, everything. And then we just took that money and flew out on a one-way ticket, and we burnt through that money too. So it's not like we added to the pot at all. We burnt the pot, and then we would find different ways of funding it. So when we left, we weren't making any money online. I had a vintage store that I tried online that failed, and then I turned the same website into a travel blog specifically about me, and just like really boring and kind of like a diary for my family, and didn't like that. And so then I turned Cool Young History into just like kind of a lifestyle of a traveler type of thing, so that it's not so much about me, but that's been my thing. And then my husband has been an artist, and so he's been doing freelance work everywhere we go, and he's painted murals in Panama and Italy and England here. He's done so many different, things with his art, and so now he's creating a website for freelance artists. And so our journey has been, doing it on the fly as far as the traveling goes, but also the funding of the traveling, because we've been figuring out how to generate money online, in the moment, like in a necessary moment. Like we
Right.
need to make some money, because we're going to Europe in, 2 weeks, and we have $200. And so that's not going to work. And so we'll battle down in Mexico or Nicaragua or wherever we are. And I do freelance writing as well. And I can do web development. And so basically for us, it's been creating money online, but also minimizing our expenses of traveling. So we don't ever really pay for accommodation. I should say we don't pay for accommodation where the dollar is not strong. So in Central America, we paid for a lot of accommodation, but it was very, very cheap because the dollar is very strong in Central America. But in Europe, we've been here for 6 months now, and we have not paid for accommodation outside of, we want to take a 2-day trip to, somewhere and get a hotel. But for the majority of the time, we haven't paid for accommodation at all, or food for that matter.
Right. So let's just sort of clarify that before people think that you're sort of, you're making a break for at 6 a.m. before paying your bill. How are you actually getting accommodation?
Yes, I forget sometimes. So yeah, right now we're house sitting. Right. So a couple they have a camper and they're traveling all the way to Italy for 2 months. And so we're here watching their home and, obviously living in their home. And they have 2 cats. And so we feed the cats and, give them cuddles. And that's our exchange for living here for 2 months. And it's a very, very comfortable home. And it's just kind of unbelievable because this is our first house sit that we met another couple that was traveling indefinitely like us, and they told us about, you've got to do house sitting. This was actually, we met them when we were living in an Italian villa in Umbria on the border of Tuscany. Beautiful villa. We stayed there for 3 months and had, our own apartment, and all of our food was covered there. And what we would do was, in exchange for that, we would cook dinners for the B&B. Every 5 nights a week or 4 nights a week, something like that. We would cook these really good Italian dinners and learned all these great recipes. They had an outdoor pizza oven. Every week we would have pizza night, and it was a really, really fun time. And but anyways, we met this couple there our first day that told us about doing house sitting. And so we got into that in England. And so we between work exchange where we volunteer 3 to 4 hours a day to help someone, and then they cover our accommodation and food. Or once we had in London, we stayed in London for a month. We had our accommodation covered, our food covered, our travel expenses covered. So, they gave us an Oyster card and, topped it up every time we needed, and we could just go wherever we wanted, whenever we wanted. And it's kind of been remarkable to learn the different ways that you can travel for so cheaply that I researched, in my little apartment in Columbus, and kind of thought, this can't be real. These people just don't do these type of things, but they do. There's a real community set up for travelers all over the world to, stay. And then it's not even just staying for free. It's staying with a local person and really getting to understand, the culture of a place. So yeah, it's really, really cool, but it's very also beneficial for people who are traveling on, such a small income, because we can travel as long as we want when you're only paying for your train or bus ticket there,
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think what you're showing people is maybe an option they've never considered, right? And it's not, I think, an option which people will do begrudgingly. It's like, oh no, I have to stay with these people and to get free accommodation. It sounds like it's almost a bonus as well, right? You meet some great people.
Right, you definitely do. And like I said, a lot of the places we've gotten our private, our independent, accommodation. We've gotten a flat in England. We had an apartment, a villa in Italy. We've right now we have the entire home. But this isn't a work exchange. This is just house sitting, and it's just us in this house, and we don't do any type of work exchange like you do with the other types. So.
Right, except the cats.
Except the cats, which I had never lived with cats, so I was worried about that. But they're so sweet, and so it works out perfectly.
That's amazing. I think it's great what you're doing, and I think it's definitely a great way of experiencing the culture as you move around, right? Because I think if you can stay in places and you get long-term accommodation, you can easily become isolated from the culture because you're not working as well. I think we have to remember you're not going to a regular place of work.
Right.
You don't have children in the school, so you don't necessarily have that easy access to the people around you, right? So it's easy to sort of fall into a bubble and
Yeah.
not, or sort of get hooked up with the expat community as well, and you sort of miss out
Right.
on really sort
Yeah.
of getting in with the locals. And I think that's the beauty of travel, right?
Mm-hmm. It really is, and it's so easy to, do